So now we go into some real meaty stuff, and we go to the Three Waters reform update, and a very comprehensive report. But Jeff, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. I thought it was worthwhile keeping Council updated with Three Waters reform, and I guess I could take this opportunity now, rather than when we were talking about the annual plan, just to identify the big risks that we do face with Three Waters reform. This is an enormous comprehensive program of work that is being mandated by central government, and we really aren't resourced up to cope with it. And it's going to get more and more pressing as time goes on. So when we talk about the pressures on staff, this would have to be one of the biggest pressures that the staff are going to face over the next 18 months to 2 years. Hence why we've taken the infrastructure and services manager role and split it into two, because of the workload that will come from Three Waters reform. But what I thought I'd do was just really update you on all of the work streams that are going on with Three Waters reform, and there are a number of them. There's policy work streams, economic work streams, there's governance work streams, there's transition work streams, there's planning work streams, and we're involved in a lot of these pieces of work. So it's quite a lot to get your head around. What I'll probably do each council meeting is use this report format to bring back to council updates on Three Waters reform and how that is progressing, just so that it stays in your mind, because it is such a large piece of work for the teams. So with that, I guess I'll take the report as read and ask for questions.
Okay, so we'll just do questions first, please. So questions. So Rebecca? No. Robin?
Oh, sorry, I was using my mouse and it didn't work. A few questions. So on page, I think it's page 57, I guess around the, and to your point just now, Jeff, about the resources. So one of my questions is, will LGNZ/councils be actually pushing for funding from central government to support additional resources? And as you've highlighted, small councils in particular can ill afford to have staff taken away from business as usual. And I know, you know, in some of our departments, and especially in the building team and so on, we are really, really under-resourced there already with, you know, recruiting, and now we've got this on top.
Yeah, so we've been pushing DIA for understanding their transition funding. They have had a budget for transition funding in the DIA, but for some reason that budget was their own internal one, and they haven't considered any potential funding for councils for transition funding. So what we think is occurring is they have gone back to central government in this budget round to seek central government funding for transition work for councils, and this is going to do a number of things. It'll fund our own council staff, hopefully allow us to backfill roles that end up being taken into Three Waters reform, and it should also continue to fund Scott Consulting. So Dougal Scott, some of you may have met Dougal. He's supporting the Wellington Region councils in terms of the Three Waters reform transition. So we're hoping that the DIA funding will also be able to support Dougal Scott. But you are correct, Robin. Our assessment is the cost to deliver this piece of work over a period of time, over the next 2 years, could be sort of in the region of $850,000 to Carterton Council. So we haven't included that in our annual plan. We are totally expecting that funding to come from central government to offset the cost that is being mandated on council.
Okay, thank you. So I guess my next question is, what happens if we don't receive that funding? How are we going to?
Then I'm going to come back to you because it would be I wouldn't want to go over budget. I would come back to council and we would have to consider ways on how we would fund it. Most likely we would fund it from reserves. rather than try and fund it from rates.
Okay, thank you. I guess I probably ought to have phrased it. What are our options? Thank you. Another question I have, which is on page 61, regarding, it's just above point 11, given the intent of the government to introduce the first bill last year, and because it's now late, timeframes for public submissions and hearings are likely to be very tight indeed. I guess I'm probably, like some of my colleagues, extremely skeptical that actually there will be any opportunity for the public to make any submissions whatsoever. And I guess from conversations you've had with your colleagues, realistically, if there are any public submissions, will we have, there's a couple of questions here, will we have any opportunity as councils to have input into what the process is? And I guess then, sort of crystal ball stuff, realistically, will central government actually pay any attention whatsoever to what the public have to say?
All right, so a couple of really good questions there. I think we will have the opportunity through the select committee process to submit, but I think it will be limited to the select committee process. The opportunity for us, I think, well, perhaps I could take a step back. Our submission, the Wellington Region Council submission on economic regulation for Three Waters reform, was probably the most comprehensive submission that the DIA received. And that was the working group from led by Dougal Scott and the Wellington Region Councils. And mainly because there was a lot of ex-staff within the Wellington region who have been involved in regulatory reform previously, whether that be gas, electricity, power, or transmission. So there was a lot of resource available. So we were able to make a really compelling submission on some of the economic regulation. I expect that our best chances of getting changes through would be as a combined Wellington regional group to submit into this process. So other than that, I think a lot of the reference groups will have the most impact as well. So the governance, accountability and representation reference group, rural water supplies reference group and the planning reference group are probably going to make the most change to central government thinking.
Thank you. No more questions, just comments for later. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Robin. Brian? No. Joel?
No.
Steve? No. Okay, thank you. So we'll now move on to discussion and comment. So yeah, I'll open it up now, but one thing we just need to focus on is how, as an organisation, we're dealing with the reforms rather than trying to get too political as far as the right or the wrong of them may be. But I'm not telling you not to mention that, but it's how, as an organisation, we're coping. So start with Dale.
Yeah, it was just interesting to note the responses to our list of questions. Question 1, and Jeff just mentioned it before. So the general public is basically being treated the same way as councils. In other words, it's not a consultation for the public. The public will have to book their space in a select committee process, get themselves to Wellington, and in their 10 minutes allowed to take their best shot. And noting that our answers to our questions came back after the decision to mandate. So, you know, I'll just park that aside. But what I really wanted to say was, we talked just recently that of taking our MP Kieran's offer up again of meeting after 3 months, and it's about time, because I really think we need to talk to Kieran about the impact of resourcing that Jeff's just raised, of how we manage all of this process going forward, and particularly as we've just said, our annual plan. You know, we can't possibly absorb staffing costs and increases on top of what we were already facing without some awareness from central government.
Yeah, thank you. I might just comment on that last point, Dale. I'll need to check on it, but I'm pretty sure with the heads of agreement document with LGNZ, there was talk of that those costs being covered. So yeah. So and I think it's just the way the DIA has presented it, as Jeff mentioned, that
You're waiting for the budget approval.
yeah. So I can't imagine councils having to fund it, but yeah, good questions though. Yeah, thank you. So next one, Rebecca. Yep.
Yeah, it's a great report. Thank you, Jeff. It's got heaps of great information in it. I guess my first comment is I think it's absolutely crazy that they are asking for more information from councils 12 months on from that huge data haul that they had. And then you've noticed that they're already for more granular information, and it could be $850,000 worth of staff time. I just think it's incredibly, it's terrible that they're asking a small council like us to be able to stump up with that without having that budget in place from the get-go. Like, it shouldn't be an afterthought. I'm very interested to see the work being done on the Better Off funding. It's disappointing that it hasn't come out yet when they've indicated 2 dates already and it hasn't happened. I'm very keen to see how we could possibly utilise this as an investment and see if it could generate some alternative income streams for Carterton going forward, as we all know we're very short of those. The other disappointing fact that I just wanted to mention is just we're supposed to be a partner in this process, but there's a real lack of communication from the government coming through when there's media announcements on some quite big reports that have come back, and we aren't being trusted with even an embargoed media statement. And so as soon as it's announced, we're on the back foot with the community because we haven't even seen the information that's in the newspaper. I really support the work that the technical groups are doing, and they're looking at some really important work around that, some important topics, sorry. And lastly, I just wanted to say I completely support the approach that you've taken, Jeff. I think it's under one of the financial considerations at the end of your report. I think it's spot on, and yeah, support that. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Sorry, I've just lost track of who has commented. So, Jill, I don't think you've commented, have you?
No, look, I haven't commented. Yeah, look, comprehensive work. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, this is a difficult issue, obviously, but unfortunately typical of the kind of top-down mandates that the government is appearing to do these days. So, yeah, I guess we just have to wait and see what happens and go with the flow and see what happens at the end. We don't, well, I guess it's mandated, but hey, who knows? That may change too.
Thank you. Steve.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I don't really have a lot more to add. Everyone's pretty well said it on. This whole process has been disappointing, to say the least. Our time spent around the workshop table, and I feel the time that could potentially be put on councils, our council, if you're saying 850K worth of work, and potentially that all that work might just be an absolute waste of time, and they'll just railroad all this and plough ahead anyway. It's just I think it's just an absolute mess, and Tina Nixon put it right on the front page of the paper. The lack of engagement with even us and the community as a whole is just really disappointing. So I don't know where we're going to end up with this, and whether a change of government is going to remove it or some other solution will come. But I just want to thank you for all the work that you and your team are doing, Jeff, and just reiterate that it is a fantastic amount of information you've provided to the community. And I hope those who are very critical of our decision just to follow the process, I hope they read all that information that you have provided, and it might give them a slightly different perspective. So thank you.
Thank you. Brian, have you commented?
No, I haven't, but you know, I reiterate basically what everybody else has said, and one question that I would possibly consider is what happens if we stop giving them information? Do they just go ahead and do what they're going to do anyway, and it won't make any difference, or do we lose out somehow? That'd be my comment.
That's a good question, and that question has been raised, Brian, in some of the CEO working groups that I've been part of. So, you know, it's a very valid question. What happens if we just stop? We expect that the DIA would then default into a Lagoima type process. Now, depending on whether or not we adopt our annual plan, but that might allow us to charge slightly more for the requests, which I would like to highlight. The proposed charges in the Lagoima designed for those requests that are predominantly commercial or private of interest, and not necessarily those requests that are coming through that are more of a public nature or transparency. But yes, so we expect that the DIA would just default to a Lagoima or a mandated type information request process, and we would have to respond that way, Brian.
Yeah.
Jeff, just can I just ask something on your
Sorry, I knew that.
on your last comment? Does that mean we can charge them, say, $1,000 for a half an hour?
I would love to be able to, and with my commercial background, you would think that that's what I would default to. We are able to recover reasonable costs, and those reasonable costs have to be costs that we can point to have been incurred. What we can do is, and what we have done is, ask the staff to charge their time to particular time sheet codes, so that we know how much time is being spent on this, so that when the budget does come available from the DIA, we can actually go back and say we've already spent this amount of time and we have captured reasonable costs, and we can then recover those from the Crown. But yeah, I like your thought, Steve, and I would have gone there, but unfortunately, as council, we're only allowed to charge reasonable costs, not market rate.
Yeah, thank you. I think everyone's commented. Just a few comments from me. We've got Robin. Oh, Robin, you go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I sort of just a couple of comments, and I guess to highlight sort of for the community and the ratepayers as well, who seem to have, some people seem to be misguided, thinking that we actually have all the information. I just like to sort of highlight the point on the top of page 63 above the 12.4 of the items that are still to be confirmed. So that transitional assistance from DIA, very importantly for our district, is the treatment of rural water races. I mean, that's just going to, can't even begin to imagine what can of worms that's going to be. And also the land water catchment areas. So just again, for our community's perspective, none of this stuff's been confirmed yet. We've had no indication of it, and we're as much in the dark as they are. So I think your report, Jeff, as has been mentioned, will hopefully give some really good information for those that are genuinely interested in understanding what the facts are, as opposed to just pointing the finger.
Yeah, you make a very good point, Councillor Cherry Campbell. That I think the rural water races are a big issue for councils like ours. And if I could highlight the fact that I've attached a couple of links in the report to the DIA website, where the minutes are available from the Rural Water Supply Working Group or Technical Working Group. I think that would be a really good place just to keep an eye on how that technical working group is considering rural water. If I were a betting man, I would say that it's most likely the water races will probably remain with council. And the reason I say that is there doesn't appear to be a direct or a high value revenue stream associated with it compared to the costs associated. So My pick is they're probably going to stay with council rather than be picked up into the water services entity. But I do encourage people to go to that link on my report and connect through to the DIA site and keep up to date with those minutes from the Rural Water Supply Working Group.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff and Robin. Just a couple of points from me. I just got to acknowledge the approach we're taking. If change is going to happen, to work with it and get the best out of it is crucial. And as much as, you know, we talked about not supplying information, the more information we supply, the better off we are going to be really on outcomes. And I'm the first one to admit the process has been absolutely appalling, but sometimes you've got to go with that change, and we just got to remember what the key principles are, and that's outcomes. And the outcomes is, and have been strongly promoted, it's affordable water for our ratepayers, good quality water, and good quality, reliable infrastructure. And I know there's a lot of doubting over whether that would be achievable, but that's the vision, and that's what we want for our ratepayer. And looking at the reforms overseas when they've happened, the transition process in every case has been absolutely messy, really messy. But just about in every case, the outcomes have ended up being okay, and it's a long-term vision as well. And just to acknowledge the work that Jeff is doing in the Greater Wellington region, a lot of the information has been taken aboard, especially with the working group that's fed back to the Minister on accountability and governance. The Entity C model, the Wellington model, was put forward as a case. So we're very much in the front case, you know, the front foot there in respect to that. And you just acknowledge that the work that's going in, and it's hard, but yeah, just got to go with change, and we've done that so far, and we're doing it for the betterment of our community. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Yeah, thank you. So there's no further comment. We'll go to the recommendations, and there's two there. We received the report, and notes further updates to council will be made as information comes to hand. And I think that second recommendation is crucial. And through this reporting mechanism, the community becomes very much in favour of that as well. So we'll take those two together, please, and can I have a mover? Dale, a seconder? Robin, all those in favour? Right, carried. Okay, thank you.